Hey guys, what's up? We are back again with another video. Today I am joined by American Football Network, and we are talking about the Big Ten East and our predictions for this contentious division where a lot of teams are vying for the title that have a reasonable shot at it. So it's going to be quite the interesting video. Lincoln, how are we doing?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. The channel's been doing good as of late. Got about 50 subscribers away from that 1,000 mark, so doing pretty good there. And I've seen our channel, College Football Roundup's been doing really good too. So that's always nice to see.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to Roundup and hit the notification bell if you're not already on that channel. There will be a link in the description for either of our channels because there will be some exclusive content coming up on Roundup exclusively. And if you're on Roundup, go ahead and subscribe there as well. And let's go ahead and just get started into today's video. So at number 7, who do you have, Lincoln?
So at number 7, I have the Indiana Hoosiers. So we know 2021 they had a good season with Michael Penix, and they had a bunch of good pieces offensively and defensively to go around him at quarterback, but they lost. At this point they've lost pretty much all of that, but the offensive line from the center over to the left side. That's about all they still have from that. And so I don't like this team at all. They don't have a quarterback. They have the worst overall roster, in my opinion, in the Big Ten, other than maybe Northwestern. But I think Northwestern at least has a quarterback in Ryan Helinski. And so I think Indiana may be the worst overall. They're definitely the worst roster in this division in the Big Ten East. And so I'm not really I'm not really high on Indiana. I think they're a 3-9 type team, 3-9 4-8, much like they were last year. Maybe they can get 2 Big Ten wins like they did last year, but I don't see it. I don't see them beating a team like Illinois and at Michigan State again. I don't see them winning those games. I think they win 1 to 4 games, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I have Indiana also in that bottom spot. I really don't think it's arguable. I think that Indiana they're going to get Rutgers at home this year, so that's possibly a win. But even then, I think Rutgers will be better than they were last year. So I don't see it with Indiana. I think Tom Allen's on the hot seat and probably his last year at Indiana. So
Yeah, I mean, I really only see them winning week 2 against Indiana State and week 4 against Akron.
yeah. I
Those are
think
really the
that
only wins I see for them.
I think that it's a possible win, a home game against Michigan State, because I do think Michigan State has struggled, or a home game against Rutgers. But other than that,
Yeah.
maybe Louisville, because they haven't really they
Yeah, in
haven't
week
had much
3,
time. But
possibly. But Louisville will be much better coached in that game for sure.
yeah. So number 6, who do you have at number 6?
So at number 6, I have Rutgers. I think that, their team, I know you were very high on last year. I think you had them going, what, 7-5?
No, 6 and 6.
6-6? Okay. So 2 games off there. But, it's a team they're kind of a weird team because, like, they get some talent and you think, okay, they're going to have a solid season. Greg Schiano is a solid coach. And then they still just go 4-8, 5-7 every single season. And that's all they've ever done is go 4-8 or 5-7 pretty much every single year. And last year they did go 4-8. They didn't really have any good wins except for at Boston College, 22-21 in week 1. And I don't even know if you can say that was a good win, but probably their best win. This year they do start out with a pretty favorable schedule, and for the first 5 games, Northwestern, Temple, Virginia Tech, all at home. At Michigan, they're going to get killed, and then Wagner at home. So it's possible they win 4 of their first 5 games.
Hey, no Jim Harbaugh. No Jim
Yeah,
Harbaugh. The
that is true.
Burgergate. So
No Harbaugh.
the infamous Burgergate scandal. So
Yeah, no Harbaugh. So maybe, but I just don't think Rutgers really has the talent to compete with teams in this division. I think that there are 4 teams that are going to be very good and inside the top 25 in this division. Michigan State, they're not going to be top 25. I feel like they're going to struggle some this year, but they're going to have some pieces. So I think Rutgers they're a step ahead of Indiana, but about pretty much a step below everybody else ahead of them that I have ahead of them.
Yeah, definitely. At number 6, I have Michigan State. I'll get my thoughts on Rutgers here in a minute. But when it comes to Michigan State, I'm particularly down on them because I think that a lot of their team, with losing Peyton Thorne, I think that they definitely have lost a lot at quarterback position. He was, I think, their best player all around. And I think that just overall, I'm looking at this team and trying to find pieces that I'm really excited about, but no Keon Coleman, no Jaden Reed, no Peyton Thorne. I don't see anybody that's going to be able to make an impact, and I'm very concerned about this team, and I just don't see them being able to beat an Illinois or to beat a Wisconsin again, or even Rutgers. I think could be difficult with this year's matchup being on the road. So I think that this year you're looking at a very difficult schedule. That, and then also you're looking at a team that has a lot of missing pieces.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I have Michigan State at 5. I do think that they're a little bit better head coached. I like Mel Tucker a little bit better. I do agree with you with the weapons. Like, they don't really have any weapons at the receiver position. The biggest name guy that they have on their roster at receiver is Antonio Gates Jr. That's only because of his dad, who his dad is. So they don't have anybody that's really, that you feel confident in at quarterback. They do return a decent bit on the defense, but that being said, the defense wasn't very good last year at all. So, I think Michigan State's going to struggle this season, but I do think that they have more opportunities to get some wins in the Big Ten. Like, I think that they can win at Indiana and at Rutgers, and that puts them ahead of both of those two teams. I think they can win those games. Maybe even Maryland at home in week 4, although unlikely because we know how Maryland plays earlier in the season compared to the end of the season. Maryland just lights out for the first 5-6 games and then terrible for the last 5 or 6.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be a tough road for the Spartans this year. At number 5, I have Rutgers. I think I'm a little bit higher on Rutgers. I think that Greg Schiano is a good coach. And I also think that personally the schedule works out really well. You play Northwestern week 1. That should be a win because, well, Northwestern is in shambles. And then you have a Temple team that you didn't beat by much last year. I will be honest in that. But I do think that you should be able to beat them. I think Virginia Tech, with the game being at home, you have a better shot. You play Wagner later on. And then you play Michigan State at home, and then as well as Indiana on the road. I think that this team, especially in the first half, has a chance to really get out to a hot start, possibly even a 5-2 start with their only losses against Wisconsin and Michigan. But I think that this team, under Greg Schiano, I think Greg Schiano is like one of the few people that can coach at Rutgers. Plus, last year, you had a quarterback room that your quarterback, your starting quarterback threw 45% completion percentage. So it really can't get that much worse. So I think that you definitely have a team that you're going to improve this year on the offensive end, especially. And I think you're going to start to put some points up on the board, which is something that Rutgers struggled to do last year. And I think this year they'll have the opportunity to do it. So who's your number 4 team, Lincoln?
So number 4, I have the Maryland Terrapins. This is a team that I could see a little bit higher, but because of what we talked about with the way that they've finished the season out year after year, I don't want to put them up there. It's going to be tough to put them up there. They started the season out last year 5-2, and then went 3-3 after that, and that's not even the worst that it's been, for late season under Mike Locksley. With Maryland. So in the end of their season, they get a pretty tough schedule also. They start out with Townsend, Charlotte, Virginia, at Michigan State, Indiana. I think that they're probably 5-0 going on the road to Ohio State. We'll see what happens there. They only lost by 13 last year, so they're closing the margin year by year. So maybe they do something there. All those big time 5-star linebackers and defensive players that they recruited a few years ago are juniors and seniors now. So the defense will be even more improved than it was last year. But after those first 5 games, then they go on the road to Ohio State, Illinois at home. They do go on the road to Northwestern, but then they get Penn State at home, at Nebraska, Michigan at home. I could see them losing all 5 of those games at Ohio State, Illinois, Penn State, at Nebraska, and Michigan. It's a potential they could lose all 5 of those games and only win 2 more down the stretch at Northwestern and at Rutgers to end the season. So, Maryland's a team that I think is a very good team. I don't want to put them any higher because I want to see how they can close out the season.
Yeah. At number 4 for me, I am going to have Maryland. I think I agree with Lincoln here for the most part. I think that this team is just simply, they're good, they're solid, but the big thing that I'm going to hang my hat on when it comes to Penn State being better than Maryland is really the fact that their defense and their secondary is so good. And I do think that Maryland has to take a step. I think that they have some solid pieces, but you got to take a step at some point, and I think that this is the season. Obviously, Mike Loxby in his 5th season. This is a big season for him. He's got to get some wins, but we'll kind of see where it leads. But I think that they should have a good season here under Loxby particularly, so I think that it should be a good season overall. Who's your number 3 team in this conference, our division?
At number 3, I have Penn State. I think this is a very good team, especially defensively, like you said, in the secondary. I think offensively, they have a lot of pieces to work with. It all kind of depends on what Drew Aller is, and I expect him to be good like everybody else expects him to be. I do think that the only 2 losses they will have this year is to Michigan and at Ohio State. I think those are the only 2 games that they lose, and I could see them beating Michigan at home. I think Ohio State's a little more far stretched since it's at Ohio State, but there's a shot that they beat Michigan at home and get a win there. And, I love the playmakers that they have, and Keandre Lambert Smith and Harrison Wallace and Dante Stephens and Nicholas Singleton at running back, who's an absolute beast when healthy. Hopefully he can stay healthy again, full season like he did last year. Because that's kind of been a position that Penn State struggled with keeping guys healthy at, is the running back position over the last 3 or 4 years, is keeping those guys healthy. So hopefully he can stay healthy and be a monster for them. And I think it's going to be a great season for Penn State. But I do think they're still just a little bit below Michigan and Ohio State when it comes to competing for the division title.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Penn State is kind of in a category by themselves. I think that Penn State, it kind of goes everybody else. There's a big gap between, I think, Rutgers and Maryland. And then I think that there's a big gap between Penn State and Maryland. And I don't see the ability for Penn State to close that gap that is even bigger between them and Ohio State. So I agree. I think it is possible that Penn State in a whiteout environment could beat a Michigan team. If Drew Allard is playing well and if everything's working, it's definitely a possibility. This is a good Penn State team. This really is. And it's a Penn State team that reasonably could compete for the division title. And if you compete for the division title, you're competing for a playoff spot. But I find it difficult.
And it's not one of these Penn State teams over the past years that have just been completely overrated and put in the playoff for no reason at all. This is a team that can actually win it and actually has a talented quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And with Penn State, particularly this year, the only part that is keeping me a little bit back and hesitant on making this team a 1 or a 2 seed in this division is the simple fact that I don't know what Drew Allard is. I don't really fully know whether he is going to be a high enough level quarterback in order to beat Michigan, to beat Ohio State, because there is some questions at Ohio State at quarterback. There are some questions at Michigan when it comes to can this team really move it up to the next level and win a playoff game. So we'll kind of see where that leads us, but it definitely is an environment that you have to show me before I'm going to pick you to do it. When it comes to winning the division, particularly. So, number two.
With Aller, real quick, I expect him to be great this season, but how's he going to play in those individual games? Not necessarily that he can't play great, but is the moment and the importance of the game going to get to him? Because basically, when they go on the road to Ohio State and play Michigan at home, they're pretty much playing for the conference championship in both of those games. If they win both of them, they'll go to the conference championship and probably beat Wisconsin, who I think will most likely come out of the West. I think Ohio State and Michigan are both over them. I think Penn State's a little bit closer, but it's essentially playing for the conference championship in those weeks. So can he live up to the hype? But my number 2 team, I have the Michigan Wolverines. I think that they go 11-1 this year. They lose to Ohio State at home. That is the only game I have them losing. So I just think Michigan, they have Corum, they have McCarthy, they have the offensive line, but they don't really have any receivers that I really trust to make some plays. Cornelius Johnson is their best returning receiver. The dude had 32 catches for 500 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. The defense is great, but can the offense put up some points? Because in this division especially, they're going to have to score points. They're not in the West where you can score 10 points and win a game. They're going to have to score 20-plus points a game at the very least to win a game. Probably in some occasions score 30-plus, 40-plus. So can this Michigan offense do that? We'll see without the top-end receivers.
Yeah. At number 2, I have Ohio State. I just think that Ohio State's questions at quarterback are bigger than Michigan's questions at wide receiver. And I think that when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State, we both kind of I call into this radio show that lives near us, and he is very high on Ryan Day and what Ryan Day did against Georgia, and he's right. Ryan Day did a great job game planning, but the problem that I have with that one individual game is that great job, he did a really good job against an elite level Georgia defense, but what else has Ryan Day done as head coach that couldn't have been accomplished by almost anybody else? Because he was put in a situation that
he basically took over a national championship caliber team.
Yes,
and one of the biggest names in brands in college football. So it's not going to be hard. You can be a terrible recruiter and still get a top 5 class at Ohio State. And
correct.
I agree with your point completely. He's had a few games and a few big games where he's game planned perfectly. Do you look at the Georgia game? You look at the Clemson game, both years, I would say, really. I think both years he game planned really well for Clemson. But then you look at some of those other games. You look at the Michigan game the last 2 years. You look at the game whenever he plays Alabama in the national championship. You look at, just a few other games where you're like, what the heck? Like, what are they even doing out there? Where the game planning hasn't been. So I think just as much as he's game planned perfectly for elite level teams, he's also completely dropped the ball on game planning for elite level teams as well. And that is my number 1, Ohio State. I think Kyle McCord at quarterback is going to be. I mean, he doesn't even have to be perfect. You look at his receivers; he just has to be a good, solid quarterback for them to average 50 points a game. They got Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams at running back, 2 elite level running backs. Then you look at receivers. You have Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka, and Marvin Harrison. All 3 of those guys, I believe, are top 10 receivers in the country. Fleming, you can argue, isn't at the lowest. He's top 15, top 12. So, they have an elite level offense. My question for Ohio State is, what's the defense? I don't really think early in the season there's anybody that's going to hurt them defensively, because I feel like all these teams that they play until they get to Michigan at the end of the season, that they can outscore them easily. They can put up 40 points on them, and some of these other teams aren't necessarily going to be able to put up 40 points that they have. And so I like Ohio State at 1. I think Michigan's the only team because I think Michigan is the only team with a very real chance of consistently stopping Ohio State throughout the course of the season. But I still have Ohio State at 1.
Here's the point that I would make in comparison of Michigan over Ohio State is this. I'm going to have the same point that I did with Jim Harbaugh. I'm not going to pick you to beat Michigan until you beat Michigan. And I get that Ryan Day beat Michigan his first 2 years, but those were with Urban Meyer's teams. Now I want to see Ryan Day beat Jim Harbaugh with Ryan Day teams, not Urban Meyer teams, not Urban Meyer talent, but Ryan Day team and Ryan Day talent. I think that this is a team that whenever somebody comes up to Ohio State and says, I'm going to bully you around, they don't know what to do. And I don't get why Georgia wasn't able to do that last year and just say, we're going to bully you all game long and we're going to win. I don't get why that did not happen. I can't honestly explain that. But like when you play Michigan or even when you played Notre Dame last year, like to take that example, yeah, you beat Notre Dame and you beat them by 11, but it was also a home game in week 1. Notre Dame bullied you around for most of the game.
I wouldn't really say Notre Dame really bullied Ohio State around. I mean, they
didn't let them run the ball until later on in the fourth quarter. It wasn't until the very end of the game that they were able to get any rushing yards.
But they were still lighting you up through the air.
Not really. They scored 21 points in that game, Lincoln.
Right, but for you to say Notre Dame bullied them around, they only scored 10 points. If you're bullying a team around, you're going to score more than 10 points in a football game.
I mean physically in the trenches. I get Notre Dame. There were other issues, but point being is that point I'm making is Notre Dame is a physical team, and Ohio State struggled to be able to match that physicality to where they could just beat Notre Dame and walk all over them, which is what most people thought going into that game, is that Notre Dame was just going to get lit up and walked all over and everything like that. The spread was 16 points. So it's not like I'm wrong in saying that because Notre Dame kept that game pretty close until the end, and even then it was 11 points. I think that this is a team that Ohio State struggles to be fully physical against their opponents that are super physical, and I'm a little bit concerned. I'm concerned about the Wisconsin game. I don't know if Wisconsin has it in them to beat Ohio State, but I'm concerned about that game because I do think Wisconsin can play physical. I just don't know whether Wisconsin's physicality will be able to slow down Ohio State's passing attack because I don't know how good Kyle McCord is, even though the wide receivers are obviously at like all-time level good.
Yeah, with the Wisconsin game, I feel like under Fickle, Wisconsin's not going to get any more physical than they have been in past years. I don't think they're going to be any more physical. And last year they lost like 52-17 or something like that.
But they will be able to pass the ball this year. I think that they will have the two identities.
Oh yeah, I just mean I don't think the physicality of Wisconsin is what's going to makes that game close.
Well, okay, so here's the point that I would make with this. I think that Michigan, their ability to pass the ball downfield because of their physicality presence coming in made Jim Nolan say, hey, I'm going to put 7 or 8 guys in the box every play and say beat us over the top while we're playing either zero or cover 1. So when J.J. McCarthy just threw it over them, they had no issues, but it was because of their physicality that they had that opening. That's what I'm saying, is that because of their physicality, they may have an opening that they couldn't take advantage of until this year because Tanner Mordecai is now their quarterback.
Yeah, I see that. I don't think Wisconsin – I see your point with Michigan. I don't think Wisconsin's going to be the team to do it.
I don't think that Penn State or Ohio State loses to Wisconsin. It's just a point that I think it is going to be a game that,
I think it can help make the game a little bit closer and more of a respectable score for Wisconsin than 52-17. But
plus, Fickell will want to beat his old team and a team that I'm sure he feels like he should be the head coach and not Ryan Day.
I think they still win by 20 plus, though.
Probably.
Easily.
You never know. It comes fourth quarter time and they're playing jump around and it's a one-score ball game. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows if it gets to that point, but I don't know. I see Ohio State jumping on them early.
Yeah.
Very
So
early.
that's going to wrap up today's video. Make sure that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We'll have the Big Ten West video coming out soon after this one. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment your thoughts and predictions down below because I'm sure some of you Ohio State fans would like to have a talk with me and Michigan fans would like to have a talk with Lincoln. So that's going to wrap up today's video. And as always, have a great day. See you guys.
See you next time.